gaming. Does the body good. Video games have completely shattered the expectations that we had for them after the great video game crash of the 80s and its revival with the release of the NES. It's been a wild ride to see the evolution of how we perceive video games as a society. They went from being just a fad that'll go away like all the others, to gaining more prominence but still struggling to be seen as art, to becoming one of the biggest entertainment mediums on the planet. My gaming journey started with the PlayStation 1 and Crash Bandicoot 2, a simple platformer that's not too long, easy to pick up, but difficult to master and collect everything. My next stop was the Nintendo GameCube, and the highlight of that, of course, was Resident Evil 4. I actually don't have the case for that, but I have the discs, which is way less cool, and this was a huge step, not just for me, but for gaming as a whole. That generation saw a massive leap, not just in graphical quality, but also in narrative and public perception. More and more games were rated mature and started tackling more complex themes and had more gripping narratives. Franchises like Metal Gear Solid, which had a really good first step on the PS1, was able to really stretch its legs and get ambitious with its sequels in the next generation. Video game stories were getting better and better each year, and the gameplay was rapidly evolving as well. They were slowly but surely getting more respect as an art form, and while they did have a long way to go, it was definitely the beginning of something great. This was also around the time that anti-video game activists were getting very aggressive with their messaging that violent video games caused real-world violence and were an overall negative drain on society. The most prominent of which being former attorney Jack Thompson, who is mostly remembered for calling video games mental masturbation and for being such an unbelievable donkey ass that he had his abilities as a lawyer stripped away after he was disbarred in 2008. The release of the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Nintendo grandparent bowling machine marked the beginning of the 7th generation and the end of a lot of TVs. Grandma, for the 100th time, you have to put on your wrist strap or Reggie's gonna come to our house and kill me. This is when graphical fidelity really took center stage, as these consoles were capable of HD resolutions. I remember going over to my uncle's house when he got the 360 and I still had a GameCube, and getting to play Madden 07 on a next-gen console just blew my fucking mind. The leap from 6th generation to 7th generation was arguably the biggest graphical jump we've ever seen. However, the biggest impact this generation had was the absolute explosion of online multiplayer. Online gaming did already exist on PCs, obviously, but for consoles, it didn't really kick off until the 6th generation with PS2 and Xbox Live. And this was a good starting point, but internet access was nowhere near as accessible as it is today. Hell, I didn't even have internet at home until 2015 when I was 18 years old. Before that, I was playing Modern Warfare 3 online using my phone's hotspot, which was not optimal. But it was a whole new world for a lot of gamers like me who grew up with local multiplayer being the only option you had for hurling obscenities as you get hit with your 6th red shell in a row. Hey guys, I know we're all friends here, but like, are we good? Cause like, it kind of feels like you all fucking hate me. Now, I grew up with the ultimate gaming cheat code of the early 2000s called having a younger brother who also likes video games. So like 90% of my multiplayer gaming experiences were with him. And for as cool as it is that I can play video games with people all over the world who I would have likely never encountered otherwise, there's something that just hits different about sitting next to your siblings or your friends or even a complete stranger and experiencing a game at the same time in the same room together. Man. So online gaming pops off with Xbox Live on Xbox 360 and PSN on the PlayStation 3, and things were great. There were a few wacky things happening, like Microsoft being the only company to charge you to play games online, with Sony and Nintendo letting you play for free, which, as it should be, by the way. I don't care if they are giving you a few free games every month, there's no reason that people should have to pay to use their own internet. And a lot of people don't remember this, but even though online was free on the PlayStation 3, there were some companies that would charge you a fee to play their specific game online, even though you didn't have to pay Sony for it, which is just so fucking petty that I fail to find the words to properly describe it. But no matter how you take the good and the bad of online gaming back then, there's no denying that that explosion of online gaming set the tone for where the industry would be going for the next decade plus. And I personally think it's the main reason that I hear so many people today saying that gaming is getting stale. Gaming isn't fun anymore. Games are getting stale. There's just no good games out right now. It just feels like there's nothing to play. This is cool and all, but when's a new game gonna come out that gets me feeling all excited again? I have heard so many different versions of this over the past few years, and it's really bothered me. At first I started noticing like other streamers and content creators saying it, but then eventually I just saw like randoms on Twitter and like even people I know saying that there just aren't any good games out or any good games to play. And my honest response to hearing so much of this is that people really need to get a fucking grip. A lot of the people that I see complaining that there are no good games out or that games are getting stale play the same battle royale or FPS for 6 hours straight each day and then wonder why games don't feel fun anymore. You gotta understand, the games aren't getting stale. Your routine is getting stale. Next time I hear some nigga telling me that there's no good games to play, but they answer no to the "have you played Bloodborne" question, I'm breaking out the BBC, goddammit. Getting pretty tired of hearing people who only play 3 games a year complaining that games are getting worse and that there aren't any games to play as they enter their 58th consecutive round of Warzone so that they can die off spawn and get dumpstered in the googe and blame everybody but themselves and then load into another fucking lobby because this one's gonna be the one that they pop off and drop that 20 bomb. But let's be real, Tucker, you've never been that guy. All of this without ever even considering the option of stepping out of their comfort zone and trying to play something new. This problem is especially bad in streamers who specialize in those types of games because they have a financial incentive to play the same game all day every day. It's also the reason that I stopped streaming as much as I used to. Last year I posted a TikTok where I did a short little breakdown of an Apex Legends game that I had on stream where I sprinkled in some jokes here and there. Basically the types of video that Sally is a dog makes, but for Apex. And that video did very well on TikTok, like almost immediately. Like within minutes, it had thousands of views, hundreds of likes, and a bunch of positive comments. This really sent me into content creator mode, trying to find ways to get this new audience to tune into the stream, which would mean streaming more Apex. I've always been a variety creator because I don't like playing just one type of game. But Apex was the first competitive shooter that like really clicked with me. So of course I found ways to incorporate it into the stream, but not make it the main focus of the stream. I'm the type of streamer who you tune into for the commentary first and the gameplay second. So my community who stuck around for me having good conversations in the chat and having good commentary for whatever was going on in the games I was playing didn't really click with me nerd necking my monitor to get a really good rep going on in Apex. But when you're a bubbling creator presented with a golden opportunity to grow your following and really turn streaming into a career, you start to make some compromises. And this is why I have some empathy for streamers who say that they're looking for a new game to play, because if you already have an audience that's built around one type of game, it's much easier to bring that audience over to a new game in the same genre as opposed to doing the logical option and booting up Max Payne 3 and having a great time like a real American. Making content and specifically streaming a game in a certain category can really lock you into that category, and stepping out of it can have very real consequences. Having a big drop off in your viewership can lead to losing subs and losing money. It leads to people playing games that they hate every day because it's all their fans want to watch them do. It's one of the biggest downsides of streaming, turning your hobby of video games into nothing but a tool to make money. For a lot of people, it becomes a side hustle instead of something that you do just because you enjoy it. I got to the point where I felt like if I was playing a video game and not recording it for a video or streaming it, then I felt like I was wasting time and being unproductive, which is a very bad attitude to have. And this mindset is a direct product of that hustle, grind, set, rising, grind, sigma, male, grand rising. My queens, stop eating corn. Basically, capitalism sucks. So yeah, for streamers, I kinda get it. Like, they have a reason to be playing these online games for 10 hours each day, but I still really don't like hearing them complaining that there's no good games to play and that games are getting stale. Because if we're being honest, these big shooting game streamers are playing like 4 games a year anyway, so I'm really not taking their opinions on gaming too seriously. But no matter who you are, saying that there's no good games to play just doesn't hold up. In 2022, we got God of War Ragnarok, Stray, Mario vs. Rabbids 2, Rollerdrome, Signalis, Sifu, Proteus left early access. That game was a banger. You like Doom, you like Proteus. VR games like Compound, The Walking Dead. NFL Pro Era gave us the first decent football game in 13 years. Bayonetta 3 finally came out. Neon White, Cult of the Lamb. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I don't like it, but I'm sure one of you fuckers do. 2 different Pokemon games, one of which being the most innovative the franchise has been in years. A new Ninja Turtles game came out. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Ghostwire Tokyo looks weird, I should try that. The Stanley Parable came out again. The Witcher 3 came out again. The Last of Us came out. The Last of Us again? I mean, All right, I mean, that's fine. I mean, if you really... Hey! A new Horizon game came out, and this was a pretty big deal because the first one came out 3 days before Breath of the Wild, and it looked really weak in comparison. So they got this new one coming out on the PS5, and it's got souped up graphics and a much bigger world, and it wasn't gonna get outshined this time. Unfortunately for them, it came out 1 week before the one game I still haven't mentioned yet, fucking Elden Ring! And this isn't even scratching the surface of games that came out last year. There are so many indie developers making bangers on places like Steam or itch.io that you can play on garbage PCs for completely free. Me and my wife look on itch.io and find cool games all the time. There's this really cute and interesting visual novel called Elevator Hitch that had a bunch of endings and really cool puzzles to solve. 100% free. But wait, there's more! You know when a cool game comes out, it doesn't just get up and walk away after a few years, right? You can still play it. Even if it was released before you were born, you can still play the game. You don't have to pray it gets remastered. You can go on eBay or maybe even your local brick and mortar store and buy some old games and consoles and play some of the greatest games of all time. Except you don't even have to do that because you can just fucking emulate them. Entire catalogs of games on almost every system. Now I know that how you acquire those ROM files of those games are in a bit of a legal gray area, but if you're asking me, with how some of these companies do next to nothing to preserve their old games and expect for you to pay a monthly fee for the privilege of playing their classic games at low resolutions with barely any customization options, I'd say the old stuff's pretty fair game. Now, if you're one of those guys that just pirates a brand new video game because you just don't want to pay for it, I think that's pretty lame, but downloading a ROM of an obscure JRPG from the 90s that didn't come out in your region is hurting absolutely no one. I'll do a separate video on emulation later, but it just really grinds my butt cheeks how people get all holier than thou when someone talks about emulating some old ass game that the original creators make impossible to buy. As much as I do love emulation, I did recently start collecting retro consoles and games because I was trying to get away from all these multiplayer only ass games and go back to where I started. My gaming life for the past few months has been playing old games on an old TV, and it's been the most fun I've had in years, and I'm not kidding. I've been playing through all the old James Bond games, and I finally got to play GoldenEye 007 on an N64, which was really cool. I then played it again on PC with mouse and keyboard controls and at a high resolution and had an infinitely better time, but the point still stands. The coolest of all of this was being able to play my favorite game of all time, Metal Gear Solid, on the hardware it was created for. I originally played it back on my PSP when I was in middle school, back when you could buy PS1 classics for $5 to $10 on the PlayStation Store, something you can't currently do on the PlayStation Store unless you have a PS3, a Vita, or a PSP. Most of Sony's classic catalog now is locked behind a subscription. But even if you don't want to go back and play the classics, you still can't say there are no good games to play, because I'm almost certain that the people saying this have not stepped out of their comfort zone and tried a game in a different genre that they're not used to. There are so many great experiences that people just completely miss out on because RPGs are weird, single player games are boring, Nintendo games are for babies, and visual novels are gay, which, like, yeah, they are, but that's what makes them good. And I can fully attest to this feeling because I used to be that guy when I was younger. Back then I only played GTA, Madden, and whatever big budget Sony exclusive came out that year. It wasn't until I got older and started playing Nintendo games when the Wii U was out that I really started trying new things. I would have never thought back when I was a teenager that I would ever play a turn-based RPG. I always thought they were weird and lame, and I never understood them. Fast forward to today, and Persona 5 is one of my top games of all time. I know that's like baby's first RPG, but whatever, leave me alone. There's absolutely no way that you could go back in time and convince 15-year-old peak ADHD me that I would have over 100 hours in Ace Attorney trilogy one day. And I'm so glad I decided to try new things because I could not imagine playing nothing but fucking 8-pack leggings over here all day. I know it may seem daunting to try a new type of game, but you'll really be surprised at what can really hook you in. The last point that I want to make is that the proliferation of multiplayer games and always online games as a service is the biggest issue with gaming right now, and ultimately the reason why a lot of people feel like games aren't good anymore. I, for one, think that every game that you play shouldn't be multiplayer, or at least not competitive. This makes gaming feel more like a test of your abilities and less of a chill hobby to relax with. If you're like me and you have a job and a partner and like a life outside of video games, you're probably not gonna have enough time to grind and improve at a competitive video game. So when you do finally hop on, you can only do but so good before you run into somebody who's on their 5th straight hour of cleaning out lobbies. This is especially true once you start getting older, because if you're just like a regular nigga with a job, you are not about to keep up with these kids nowadays. These little bastards are cracked out of their goddamn minds playing Fortnite all day when they get out of school and playing creative on their phones at lunch. And you think you're gonna come home from a long day of work, sit on your couch with no headphones on and have a good time? But you wanna know what's really lame? This obsession with making every single game have some type of co-op or online feature that's ruined so many experiences that would have been just fine being single-player story games. The Destinyification of single-player games has led to so much wasted potential. Games like Gotham Knights and the Avengers probably would have been decent single-player games if they would have come out in like 2009. But instead we get this grindy, microtransaction-riddled garbage and a game that had a solid foundation, but every time I punch a guy, a bunch of fucking numbers come out of him. Every game doesn't have to be Destiny. Every game doesn't have to have you grind for loot and fight RPG enemies. So many of these games coming out nowadays would be so much better if they didn't all have to have a battle pass and some type of way to keep you playing it and paying for it for years and years. The Division looks so cool and is a legit fun shooter to play in theory, but there's nothing more annoying than landing a solid headshot on a guy who's wearing nothing but a beanie on his head and watching him shrug it off like it's nothing because he's got a bigger E-dick than you. The point I'm trying to make is, these are all reasons to be upset at how gaming is right now. There's a lot wrong with how games are made and how they try to squeeze every single last penny out of you. How games are released broken and unfinished, fixed over time, and then expect to be hailed as masterpieces once they finally fix all the shit that they should have fixed before they put it out. But none of this adds up to there's no games to play. There are too many amazing games being made and released every day for that to be the case. You want a cool single player game? Play one of the classics or try a new genre. You want a fun multiplayer experience? Playing online is pretty cool, but playing with your friends locally is an experience that you cannot get anywhere else. I know it may be hard for some to get 4 people, you know, in a room just to play video games, but if you can do it, go for it. 4-player Nightfire with the boys on the GameCube with an old-ass TV has given me more enjoyment than any high-kill game I've ever had on Apex.
On his ass, on his ass, on his ass, on his ass. Oh, shit. Oh, wait, I gotta reload. Hold on, time out. Get that boy a map. He lost. Hey, what the fuck we fighting for? Why the fuck we fighting? Yeah, nigga, don't run up.
And playing Mario Party with my friends has given me an insatiable thirst for blood. Stars cost 10 coins.
It doesn't matter if I don't ever fucking come across one.
This video is getting kind of long, so I'm just gonna leave you on this note. The next time you're feeling like that main game that you play just doesn't give you that dopamine rush that it used to, always remember that you still got 2K5, baby. That's right, 2 vids in a row.